Welcome to the Mantis Autosport Tech Session. We're super excited to have everyone with us. And I'm John Dunski. This is Dirk Dünschede. We are the co-owners of the new Mantis Autosport. So super exciting and looking forward to sharing our love of these beautiful cars together and the passion for this brand. So for those who don't know, Mantis is a 42-year-old company. Started off as Mantis Racing. Ernie Jakubowski was the founder, and most PCA members know him for his ability to wheel a car very fast, and we have a wall of plaques showing all of the different accomplishments. We're super excited that Dirk and I were able to take this business into the next generation and invigorate it and bring in some of the modern platforms. We're working on a ton of projects, so we'll talk about those tonight and do an overview of them. So hopefully the audio is good because we're on a gimbal. So my passion started about 5 years ago, club racing, and it kind of was a slippery slope. I have Facebook reminding me constantly of how slippery the slope was, where one 911 and one 944 race car turned into probably 10. So it's been amazing, and that passion and the desire to want to build and learn about the brand and the history of the brand is what brought us here today. And with every amazing desire and project, there's a amazing partner that needs to be in it. And that's where Dirk and I, over a quick phone call in the summer, threw some ideas out to each other. And here we are 6 months later. So it's really exciting. The drive with this is to create solutions for people. We have such an amazing facility here. We have 10,000 square feet, video surveillance. We work on everything from GT3, GT4 Cup cars to 944, 968, 914s, custom builds. I come from a marketing background and figured I can apply my marketing background, the medical fulfillment, and the automotive side of my world into this and really deliver the passion that it needs to continue. So I'm going to turn it over to Dirk to do a quick intro.
Hi, everybody. Dirk Dünschede. This opportunity came around in the summer, like John said, and after 25 years being in the dealer network, several different Porsche dealerships, all the way from Ontario to Florida. Saw a lot of great things from the dealer side, and always had a passion for classics. Always had a passion for performance, and most recently racing. And this was the perfect culmination of all of it. So it was a fantastic opportunity. John's not kidding when he said it was literally a phone call, in the middle of a summer's day. And the idea got thrown out there, and it just stuck, and we couldn't unstick it. And it's just turned into, to be very honest, what I've always kind of has been a dream for me to be involved in something like this, to be able to come up with solutions and creations and motorsport and make things faster and prettier and all that other good stuff. So we're really excited about all of the opportunity here. We've been so fortunate to have a huge support from the industry, from clients, past, future, lots of interest, lots of projects on the go, and we're super, super excited. So I'll hand it back over to John.
My excitement comes from the fact that I can go home and talk about builds, and it's not my money building them anymore. So it's been really fun to build start a few different builds, which we'll go through. Everything from engines to the car that's behind us that we're transforming into an outlaw street car. And it's just so much fun to take all those hours and hours of surfing the web for things that I was going to do to my cars and implement it, and the ideas with other passionate enthusiasts. And that's really what's driving me with this. And facility wise, we have such a great footprint. Mantis Racing, pre-Mantis Autosport, was really a fabrication shop, and many thought of it just as a racing shop, but really we have capabilities of fabrication for street cars, general maintenance as well. We can do in warranty oil changes. We're a whole bunch of everything to be that solution provider, including rebuilding transaxles. We're building a jig right now for doing 928 and 944 torque tubes, because the supply of used parts is dwindling. And the sad reality is we will run out at some point. And we're seeing that on the racing side with the spec Boxsters, where transmissions were fairly cost effective. And so they were just used and turfed and recycled. And really the best way to do it is build them, and that's, you know, and rebuild them. And that's stuff that we can do. We also, being a full service shop, we have full dyno services. So we have a dynamometer. We can do 700 horsepower four-wheel drive, 1100 horsepower rear-wheel drive. And basically we can do baselines. That's been a lot of fun with some of the builds that we're doing, is that taking a 35-year-old vehicle that it's like, I wonder what horsepower it's giving. So it gives us that baseline to see, you know, where do we start, and after modifications, where do we end? The other cool part of having the dyno is with some of our partners. We work with Renline, Soul Performance, MCS Shocks, Cobb. I've got to look at my list. And part of that is we're a beta site, and we're doing some testing for Soul Performance on our dyno to see the improvements. Not that Porsche's needed to be improved, but the modifications that we can make and what horsepower we're getting out of them. Other things on the track side, we can basically take a vehicle from a street vehicle to a full track car, or do track maintenance, track support. You know, sky's the limit. We do a lot of health checks now. The M97 variant, there's a lot of cars that are coming up to 10 to 15 years old. So we do boroscope services and look into the engines, on the turbos, pinning the coolant lines. We have a really fun turbo here that we've been working on to kind of perfect a tune that was done elsewhere in the US. Shift kits, like really lots of different things that we can do. We can also supply parts. You know, a lot of people don't think of us as a parts supply, but if you're perusing Pelican and other websites online, we can supply a lot of that. We stock a tremendous amount of items in our stock room, and we're making a conscious effort to look at the web and look at what the prices are out there so that we can bring the best value to the PCA UCR family. Soul Performance, I talked about the testing that we're doing. We're going to probably do a video series on that, taking a GT4, 2020 GT4, and analyzing race cats, like standard baseline, race cats, the GPF delete. So all through the gamut of different setups to see what the different renderings on horsepower come up. And again, we're working on that with Soul. We also have a Dun kit, which Dirk can speak of, and it's for the GT3 RS. And just with an intake change, we can improve 70 horsepower. Roughly. 70 horsepower. So you want to keep going with? We can keep going on projects. So yeah. So I guess we'll start on projects, and some of the questions can come up from that. So currently we've got a GT4 here we're working on. That's with the Soul project, the 997-1 that we've been fixing some of the issues that were modified by others. We just repainted and rejuvenated this beautiful 968 behind us. Sean, I don't know if you did a full interior setup, communications. We're basically remapping it all back to perfect condition. So this was painted last week. And then here, this is my favorite project right now. So this is a 82 911 SC, 3-liter engine. We are completely outlawing it, and I know purists are cringing right now, but basically we're going to 964 bumpers on it. We're taking the 3-liter, bumping it up to a 3.2-liter, going from the CIS system to CIS fuel injection to EFI system with a separate engine management controller. Basically, our baseline dyno was amazing. Like after 30 years, the cats were plugged and everything. It was 120 horsepower. So we have so much room to grow with this build. Custom wheels will be going on it. So we're really at the infancy of this, but it's been a lot of fun to shop for it. And I'm so passionate about it. We're calling it the Cloud Outlaw. It's got a really neat color that kind of grows on you. It's not quite silver. It's not quite gold. And when we first looked at the color, I was like, I don't know about that. And then the more you look at it, the more excitement. So the in-depth nature of what we're doing with this is basically a complete engine bay clean. We're going to do heat foil. So when this car is done, it's going to sound amazing, look amazing, and it's basically going to be a tasteful build so that if you pull up to this at a red light, you're going to look over and go, it looks normal, but I'm going to think twice about potentially, allegedly driving fast next to it. So yeah. And then we are building, this is one of our track cars. My favorite saying, if you can't beat them, buy them. So hopefully he's not on the webinar, but this is actually Josh Vieira's 944 championship winning car. And we managed to buy it over the winter, and we're doing a full build, and we'll go over that with the engines, but we're building a 968 engine that's going in it. And not sure what we're going to do with it yet, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So really excited about that. Full AIM data system, MCS shocks, which again, we're super proud to represent MCS. Incredible dual adjustable systems. The dampening is all set. Again, with regardless of Cayman, whatever variant, we have a ton of testing. Dirk can speak to his years with the GT3 Cup teams. And yeah. I'm going to turn it over to you to talk for a little bit. So,
all right. On top of all of the classic stuff, we do have a lot of modern projects. We have a GT3 with an engine refresh on it. Can't actually say what exactly it's going to be. The clients asked for a little bit of anonymity. But we have another 997S with a 4-liter build. We've got 2 Boxsters 986s with 3.8 liters going in them. We've got 2 other 3.4 liter bump up to 3.8 liter displacements that we're building as well. We have a little bit of a wall of engines over here right now just to show some of the actual current projects that we are working on. And we have everything from what was
the Cloud Outlaw.
Well, the Cloud Outlaw is obviously is the 82.
So 82, and what's cool about the early 3 liters is without too much effort, you can go to a 3.2 and just get incredible horsepower out of it. So this air-cooled, obviously, 82. We're just in the process of tearing down. We're waiting for pistons and cylinders. This one's also getting high-performance cams. And this will have an EFI system. Normally we work with PMO, but GenV makes an incredible system out of the UK. So this will be getting a GenV system. So for those who don't know, an IPD is basically an intake plenum, or ITV rather. So individual throttle body. So rather than having the CIS system, which is pressure based, and as you suck air, it pulls down and allows more fuel. This will be feeding a very precise amount of injected fuel into each cylinder through the individual throttle bodies. That's really, some want to stick to carbs because of the sound. This is the best of both worlds because of the fact that you're using a carb velocity stack for noise, but then you're getting the benefits of modern EFI injection to get the most horsepower out of it. So, and again, I think I mentioned at the beginning, but because of the fact that we had to break into the top end of the engine, it was a no-brainer to go to a 3.2 liter, which will even further give us extra oomph when we put it together. So part of this project, and we're documenting it for the owner, we're actually creating a scrapbook of where we started, where we're going, and that will also include the dyno sheet from the initial dyno to our tuning runs, which typically it's a day. We take a day and do an engine break-in run, get the car working properly, get any of the kinks from converting the Permatune to a EFI system, and then from there it's just, how much horsepower can we get out, respectively, of today's fuels. And that's something that why those EFI systems are good as well, is because today's fuels, there's ethanol and different additives. It's not the fuel that was running in the cars back in the 70s and 80s, well, 70s, I guess. And so there's a lot of density and weight issues with running carbs. So again, every engine is different. So this one's going to be an EFI monster. This is a CIS that we're completely rebuilding. We have an ultrasonic tank on hand, which is fantastic. So we're able to sonic all the bits. We've changed all the guides. chains, and this was a full top and bottom refresh. So again, it doesn't matter how old your car is, you know, they are good for a long time. We have a vehicle in our family that has 450,000 K on it. Original engine, only clutches done. So, you know, they're really stout motors, and especially the air-cooled and the new ones. So this one is a 2.7 liter. It's out of a chocolate brown car. Again, the color just grows on you. And we're doing PMO carbs with it to go back to keep it nostalgic to its period, but give it a more modern carb system that's brand new, basically. So this will be exciting to dyno and set up, and using that early carb setup and see what it can produce. So I'm going to hand it over to Dirk, because we're going to hit the more modern engines, and that's not my forte. So.
So yeah, over here we do have a 4-liter M97 engine, 4-liter. Again, I'm sure we could fill several of these tech sessions with all of the M96, M97 engine issues or complaints, or you might even call it fear mongering on the internet. But this one basically has all of the solutions to all of the shortcomings or weaknesses, you might say, to the engine. So it's got liners, it's got JE Racing pistons, it's got the IMS solution, it's got all of the basically goodies that help to rectify some of the gremlins underneath for the 996, 997 chassis. But you know, we've actually developed in-house a full sleeving system now, because having to deal with things across the border and shipping and all of the other nightmares, it just became necessary for developing our own program. So we have our own program now where we do our own sleeves, we source our own pistons and sides. Addressing all of the issues, the weaknesses, and making a hopefully bulletproof engine that is track ready. And we can do them all the way from just a street, you know, stock displacement OEM rebuild to a full track ready weapon with all the goodies, and you know, making your 997S a capable car on the track to challenge a GT3 even. So yeah, those are the goodies that we're doing there. Not just my thing has always been the engine. It's great to have an engine that works and that is functional and that is reliable, but there's no reason they can't look good too. So we've actually developed a cosmetic package which powder coats the blocks. Should have brought some of them out, but we have one of our next engines is actually going to be white. So be sure to follow us maybe on Instagram and follow the build as you see the white engine come together. But then over here, we'll transfer over to the 968 engine that John.
All right, I'm back. So mildly stock, potentially. And basically 968 engine that was in a accidented vehicle. And so we thought it'd be really fun to put it in a 944. One of the advantages with the 944, it's a little bit lighter. We have the race car, Josh's race car. So really what we did is we tore this down completely, checked all the bores. It was a 100,000 kilometer engine. It looked that way too. We ultrasonically cleaned everything. One of the services that we can offer as well is injector cleaning. So we serviced and cleaned the injectors, verified the rail. Some of the early rails on early 944s have issues with cracking, not so much on the 968. Just went through performance improvements on a race engine. We land up taking the dual mass flywheel off. So what we do is get a harmonic balancer on it. That's there is harmonics below 3,000, but in this case, because the car could potentially be rented at some point, we wanted to make sure that there's absolutely the most setup. This engine's going to be getting a pin, but there's a limit to what can be done with that. So because it's a race application, and our goal was to run this on pump gas and be able to run it as a cost-effective racer, and that's something that people think, wow, it's too expensive. Maybe racing is really expensive. It doesn't have to be. And one of the series that we may want to do at some point is building an SP1, which was the founding, 914s and SP1 944s were the start of club racing. And you can build a really cost-effective race car and have a lot of fun. And, as I've shown, with some of the track records and different abilities, is that you can take a really slow car, or perceived slow car, and drive it extremely fast. And what that does, it just makes you much more aware. So I have a 2020 GT4, and I was able to take that and out of the box just have an amazing time and drive it to the limit, because I'm used to driving a 944 where all your precise movements, your pedal input, it has to be so precise, because a little over braking and it's costing you time and you will not get it back. So it's a really fun experience. And those who are maybe on the fence about building a cost-effective race car, we can help you with that. SP1s are really fun, and it uses more or less a stock suspension. So, and the 8-valve engines, are amazing. We have my race car, the purple one, has a 3-year-old Mantis engine in it. We did oil analysis on it, and it's just, there's different creature things that Ernie engines that really pull. And it's not that Porsche built the engines incorrectly, but we're talking about severe duty at the track and being full blast, full saturation of oil with fuel and everything. So why not take out some of these potential problems that could happen? So I'm going to hand it back to Dirk, because admittedly, I don't know which Boxster engine that is or which one it is. And he can talk about Boxsters. We have a lot of Caymans and Boxsters that we're working on right now. And a lot of it is bore scoring, or just the cars are, 10 years old, 15 years old, and it's time for a refresh. And that's where part of our analysis and boroscope, we can really look and say, okay, well, you don't need to tear this all the way down. Here's what we can do, and find a really happy place for a build. So.
Yeah, so this one, unfortunately, did suffer the catastrophic IMS failure. So this one left the bearings, or let the bearings exit the engine case. And again, we could probably fill an entire tech session just on IMS and IMS issues. This actually ends up coming out of a special edition 2004 Boxster. And the client has decided to take the opportunity to not just repair it, but improve it or make it more powerful. And this will become a 3.8 liter. So but we're excited and can't wait to see the end result, because we're going to have two 968s or 986s with 3.8 liters in them, and it'll be interesting to see maybe which one goes quicker. But if you talk about all of these things from a purist perspective, all purists, I will be warned, should probably turn away from the screen right now, because we do have something else that is absolutely not a purist car, but really, really fun. I think John knows a little bit of the backstory of this car a little bit more. Yeah, that you can probably tell just by the look of the fenders on this thing that this is not stock at all. And it definitely has double the amount of cylinders it's supposed to have. But yeah, this is a little bit of a beast.
Don't look.
But yes, there's definitely a few extra cylinders under the hood in the form of an LS3 swap. What was the horsepower outing?
480 with hot cams. So, I mean, we'll avert our eyes of the engine, because it's not a Porsche engine. But some of the cool things that we do is these are actually steel, and we're building an RSR replica right now, and basically, or tribute car, a better term. So, and one of the things is that car has some really neat Kevlar carbon body panels, but in the back for the wells, it's all hand pounded, handcrafted steel. So this is a really good example, except for the engine, of amazing things we can do to a new or older Porsche. And basically this is widened almost 2 inches, as well as the back panels. This car has a lot of there's a Mantis SAE paper from wind tunnel testing at the Oshawa University at the wind tunnel. And basically, a lot of the principles from that wind tunnel testing are in this car and many of the race cars. And it's sometimes it's not about getting downforce; it's just about reducing drag and eliminating lift. So, you know, in a car like a 4.4, not necessarily this one, you really don't want to give it any drag or slow it down with a wing and stuff, especially at NA. So it's hey, how can we reduce lift and keep this thing planted? So just little things like the fender well. And again, that's every owner has their own taste for what they're looking to achieve. And as well with club racing, you know, the class system, which we're quite familiar with, we can build to each class, and letter classes would be the sort of starting point to say, I want to take my street car and turn it into a race car, and I'm not interested in getting into, you know, Hoosiers. I want to keep it fairly cost effective. And then all the way up to some of the spec classes. Spec Cayman is a growing class. We have a number of them in Canada, and it's a really neat platform because you're taking sort of the continuation of that 944 racer and in a bit more modern platform, and just a lot of fun. So this one is really just a fun car, high horsepower. It was a build that was started for a client who's moved back to the UK, and now the new owner is continuing on with it, and so we'll be painting it. The objective with this vehicle was a street track weapon with a comfortable interior, which sounds a bit like an oxymoron, but in the sense that we can achieve that with, you know, beautiful seats that recline and are safe for racing harnesses, as well as it has a full cage in it. So, and we're going to kind of blend in the interior with stainless and different things to create a nice driving environment for the street and for the track. So again, the widened back end, the footprint of the vehicle is much wider. Talking a bit about the transaxle side of it, or the transmission side of things. So again, I was talking about rebuilding. You know, we can rebuild pretty much everything. There are certain variants that we have to outsource pressed bearings and different things, but ultimately rebuild it becomes fairly cost effective. We also have the capability of doing GT4 gear conversion kits. So taking second through fifth and making changes to the gear ratio. I'm perfectly happy with ours on the track, but you know, everyone's taste is a little bit different to get oomph out of it. Also doing a lot of limited slip conversions. Some of the vehicles come with torsion biasing, which is a gear-based system, or none at all. So some of the race cars that are being built don't have anything in them. So like a Cayman, Cayman variant for Spec Cayman, we would add that in, some additional cooling. And again, for those who don't know, the limited slip allows the wheels to turn independently, and it will give you bigger grip through the corners by allowing the wheels, one to slow versus the other one, both of them rolling through at the same speed, potentially lifting grip. So yeah, I think I'm trying to think of what else we're going to.
Yes, questions now, perhaps?
Yeah, are there any questions that we can start with?
Yeah, we've got a couple. One was, what's going on with Ernie?
Interesting. Yeah, so I candidly joked that we were hiding Ernie in the back, and the question was, is it against his will, and it depends on the day. But no, Ernie is doing well. He's a really important asset for our team, and he's really helps us blend in the sort of the fabrication side and the knowledge that he brings on the air-cooled side. I've learned so much in the last couple months about, building this car and building other air-cooled engines, where each year has a very specific variant. Converting to EFI isn't as easy. So Ernie's with us, and he's less involved, and this gives him, the freedom as a non-owner now to help be part of it and see the vision of his first 42 years and his legacy continue on, and just do what he loves to do. So,
right. The question was, do you do the paint and body work yourselves, or do you outsource that? And maybe you can sort of touch on the process.
Yeah, so it's a bit of both. I mean, basically, we're not technically a body shop. We work in collaboration, with either FAF AutoWorks or nearby. There's a few facilities that are Porsche approved. So again, if it's a race car, we can do it in-house. We can do all the steel and fabrication we can do in-house. But really, if it's to get that absolute show finish, we will collaborate with someone else on our restoration. Our paint facility is really for the race car builds and stuff. So
you mentioned the displacement upsize from 3.0 to 3.2. Is that gained by bore or by stroke?
It's gained by bore. It's an actual full top end changeover, so pistons and cylinders, and it's straight. It's a straight swap basically. So the other thing with those CIS engines is that the form of the piston itself is not conducive to EFI. It's very much designed for the atomization or potentially lack of atomization of the CIS system. So it's kind of a must to switch it. So why not change it out? So yeah.
Question: does the 2004 boxer engine require teardown for IMS repair?
Yes, it does. It depends on how bad the IMS is damaged. Usually when the IMS does let go, it damages the IMS shaft. So the only way to replace the shaft is to actually remove it, which does include splitting the case. Also, the biggest problem with that is when you have all of those bearing fragments circulating throughout the engine, depending again on how and when it goes. If it's at idle, it's much different than if it's running, if it's being driven. But you definitely have to inspect everything to make sure that there's no other resulting damage internally. So yeah, most of the time, it requires a full rebuild. If you're super, super lucky and have big horseshoes, then yeah, you can just get away with replacing the bearing.
The other thing though too is we do have tooling so that if it's a preventative change out, we do have the tooling for all years to change it without a full engine out. But that's provided that it's just strictly a maintenance thing, rather than oops, it let go and I shut the engine off quick. That's where Dirk was talking, that by the time things are pinging around, there's probably potentially a lot more damage in there. But if it's preventative and we're doing a clutch, we're going to change it out anyways, either with the solution. We also have a couple of other holder systems, and I'm not familiar with it, but we have a few different tricks to reinforce it even further than the solutions that are out there.
Yeah, the question said repair, but it might have been doing the preventative LN engineering thing or whatever. Do you guys have an alignment rack in-house?
Yes, we have a mobile system as well as a Hunter alignment rack in-house. And we offer services, basically everything from a quick toe touch up to full corner balancing. So really depending on, in the case of a street car, it's interesting because a lot of vehicles out of the box and brand new, which we have a number of them coming in for clients, ordered over the winter, and they'll be arriving. We're doing track conversions. One of them is a GT4. We're doing full exhaust. And basically there's slight adjustments that we can do right away. And that would be corner balancing it, and making adjustments to make it even better and still maintain the streetability of it. So everything from, a 6-hour adjustment to a couple of hours to, a 20-minute toe check type thing. So we have a laser aligned rig, and then in the field when we're at the track, we can do it all on scale pads and strings and stuff. So we're happy that we partnered up a long-standing partnership with Hub Stands, which is one of the most ingenious tools for doing track setups at the track. So without the wheels on. So
very cool. Are some or all of the mechanics from the previous business staying?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone stayed. We're super excited. One of the goals Dirk and I wanted to do was learn from everyone and disrupt the least amount and really kind of what are you doing now? And we have such an amazing team and group that Ernie built here, and really, we're just slowly putting our spin on it and processes, and a lot of improvements just come from good communication. So we're really fortunate that everyone was excited to stay and work with us, and we have multiple long-standing team members. One of them has been with us for 34 plus years. So it's really exciting.
Excellent. What is the expected horsepower gain from going from a 3.0 to an EFI 3.2?
It's kind of a loaded answer because, if you're talking a CIS that hasn't been touched with, catalytics that are plugged up,
in this case, we're probably going to double the horsepower. You know, it depends, right? Are you doing race cams or high performance cams for that specific engine? I hope I don't eat my words, but I'm thinking 220 to 240 on the conservative side. Again, we're not going to run race gas in it for you know. So basically, it should double the horsepower.
Nice. What's the fastest lap of Mosport by a Mantis built car?
I want to say 120, 127 in the World Challenge Cayman, which we have, and we'll probably bring it out a few times this year. So in that, we're thinking we can make it go a little faster too with a new fancy MCS suspension. So that's a 2006 Cayman S, and it was built. It started off as a letter class. It was actually the first Cayman in North America to be built, documented by PCA Club Racing. So it's got a lot of pedigree, which is super cool. And, you know, I opened the trunk on it when we got it, and I'm like, what on earth is this? And it has like an original AOS that Ernie created long before motorsport air oil separators were created. So it's kind of a really cool piece of technology that it was the first Cayman race car, and lived a really fun life in Pirelli World Challenge and lots of club racing. So,
Right. Here's an easy one. Do you guys offer PPIs? And I know it's yes, because I got mine done there.
yeah, absolutely. We did a 69 last week. We've done some like 2016s, like absolutely anything. We do a full analysis and you know, very detailed. We create reports of all the compression, all the inspection, good, better, best of what should be maintained when. So,
thoughts on a magnesium case engine versus aluminum engine case?
Well, the biggest problem with magnesium is they just don't last as long. So, I mean, the aluminum case is definitely, they tend to hold up a little bit better. The magnesiums are getting rarer and rarer, harder to find. So they hold their value, but I think from a workability standpoint, the aluminum cases are easier to work with for sure.
Yeah, and if numbers matching is not a contention in the discussion, then there is a manufacturer that we have access to doing reproduction cases for early 911s, and they're brand new. So because really, I don't believe that you can get it from Porsche anymore. So there are cool solutions for replacing a porosity soaked case that's leaking and stuff.
Right. So flipping back to the IMS exploded Boxster, what would that cost if you had to replace the whole thing or repair the whole thing?
Well, I mean, there's options. If you're just attacking the IMS issue, you could probably get away with repairing that engine for around the $15,000 mark. Again, if you're going in there, our philosophy has always been it has to be done right. So if you're going to go in there, you have to do all the chains, guides, all of those internal pieces that it just doesn't make sense to ever have to go back in a second time. If you are able to salvage it, obviously without splitting the case in an IMS, you know, in theory, you could probably get away with doing it under $10,000 if you just did the bare bones and you got super lucky and nothing else was damaged. But for a proper repair, you're looking at about $15,000. Now, if you want to go displacement upgrade, things like that, it goes all the way up to about $23,000 for, say, to push it to a 3.6 or a 3.8. And if you want to do a track ready engine, you're looking at close to $35,000.
All right. Any 914 builds, opinions on early direct injection engines versus port injection?
That I don't know.
Sorry, what was the
914 builds?
Yeah, have you done any 914 builds? Do you have any opinions on earlier DI engines versus port injection?
Well, I mean, if you, the 914s, if you're going to go back all the way to the 2 liter, 1.8, or 1.7, I mean, the port injection was definitely a more reliable system when it was working. I think, again, like most of the older systems, they're getting harder and harder to maintain. I think for a lot of reliability reasons, things like that, some of the modern solutions are really good. If you go into the modern EFI solutions and things like that, from the port injection standpoint, though, when they work, they actually work quite well. They don't quite have the sound and all of the other emotional highs of carburetors, but when they work, they do work quite well.
You can tell by this wide variety of questions how talented you guys are at answering them, because we're all over the place. So here's the next one. I'm considering upgrading the stock shifter assembly for my 997.1 4S. Any opinion on numeric versus function first? Do you stock either of these?
We certainly, I don't know if we have any in stock. We certainly can get them. The numeric cables are absolutely an upgrade. There's nothing worse than getting to the track and then finding out that all of a sudden you don't have half of your gears. The only downfall I would say to the numerics are they definitely transmit a lot more whine. Now, numeric actually does have a new silicone boot that goes over top of the unions or the joints, the heim joints that are on there, which do isolate the noise a little bit. But I think from a reliability and a precision feel standpoint, you can't beat the numerics. Obviously, if you're going to track and you're very serious, you can also get the numeric shifter with the higher stance. But the cables are a huge, huge improvement. And I've yet to see a numeric set of cables break.
The other upgrade that's sort of the top shelf would be CAE. They make a really good setup, and they use cup car cables for it. So we'll be doing one shortly with a full CAE, and it's virtually impossible with the CAE shifter to miss a gear. It's spring loaded, similar to the numeric, but it is considered, the CAE shifter is considered the pinnacle of semi-automatic shifting or spring loaded shifting. So
cool. Do you sell tires?
We do. Yeah, we absolutely do. It's not our specialty, but as a complimentary service while all vehicles here, we absolutely can provide tire. We do all of the race cars and teams that we support, which I'm not telling anyone because it's one of the questions. So we do all the support for tires for them, as well as upgraded tires for street/track cars. So,
right. What does dyno time cost?
About $200 an hour. So there's certain considerations. That's for really intense work. But if it's just baselines, then we can certainly get that down. And at one point, I know Mantis did set up at a DE weekend and did kind of sort of consecutive dyno runs, and that's something we're open to as well. And it really depends. Like if you want a baseline, and then the flip side is if we know we're going to be an 8-hour session with a vehicle doing a full top to bottom tune with various maps and setups and fuel setups, then obviously we're going to work on a discounted product or package for that specific build. So
I took advantage of the dyno at the track one day. It was great. Love having it there. Very convenient.
It's just exciting to see wheel horsepower, and again, as we don't realize as the vehicles age, a lot of it's all about Dirk talks about this when we talk and consult with clients about engine builds. It's the fact is you got to get the air in and the air out, and those are on the NA, on the naturally aspirated engines. That's the key thing, and so it's interesting to see catalytics clogged up and what's really affecting your baseline numbers. So
at the time I had a Valvetronic exhaust, and I could turn it on or off, and I did 2 runs with it on and off, and it was a huge difference actually.
So 35 horsepower, do you think, or was it a little less than that?
About 35, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things, and one of the reasons we're working with Soul actually was because they've just developed a new GT4 street competition street header, and their issue was they didn't have access to a dyno. And they said, we really want proper baseline and then, product install numbers. And, it's very easy to speculate and say, oh, this bolts on and gets you 35 horse, this bolts on and gets you 20%, whatever. But you never really know because of conditions, variations, things like that. So the only way to truly know what kind of gains you're getting is to run the baseline, install the part or make the change, and then reevaluate. So it's absolutely huge, hugely effective to be able to actually do the before and the afters, and also the cumulative. So if you're doing a project and you're bolting on little bits and pieces, because it's one of those things that people always say, oh, well, I have this on my car. They list 4 different items and they say, this gives me 5, this gives me 7, this gives me 10, this gives me 12. Well, it doesn't always work like that. So to really truly know what gains you're getting, the only way to know is to have the first baseline and then make the change and measure again.
New question. How big of an issue is bore scoring on a 99736 engine? Will all cars eventually suffer from this? And I'll throw in a part B on that, the 3.8, because I know that's it's more of an issue on the 3.8, right? So
yeah, so that probably could fill an entire tech session as well. There are numerous theories about why it happens, what causes it, et cetera, et cetera. It always seems to be cylinder number 5 and 6. One of my beliefs is that because of so many thermal loads, the oil cooler actually sits right on top of cylinders 5 and 6, and creates an uneven thermal load on the block at that point. So there's a couple of factors that run into it. So that I don't think any one specific item causes bore scoring. It's a combination of a whole bunch of different items. Some of it is our climate, because we're the excess or the rich fueling on startup for our cars. And that's the way Porsche's always done it. Porsche always overfuels their cars on startup for rich startups. So there's a little bit of cylinder wash. There's a little bit of the way that the squirt the fuel for the M97 block through the injection. Then there's the thermal load from having the oil cooler above it. And then there's also cylinder ovaling that tends to happen over time. Also bank 2 for those engines. The thrust for the wrist pin for bank 2 is slightly different than bank 1. This is why we almost never see scoring on bank 1. So there's a bit of a thrust with the skirt issue. So over time, you always will have a little bit more contact from the piston skirt on bank 2 cylinders as you will on bank 1 cylinders. And again, those are all things that we've taken into consideration while building these engines. So will they all suffer from it? No, I don't believe so. Do they all have the possibility of having a cylinder scoring on bank 2? Yes, I do think they do, but it's always sort of a bit of a perfect storm. The driving habits, the climate, and all of those other factors come together in order to create that problem. So I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to it, but they all have the potential to happen.
For a 944, 968, what extreme summer tires would you recommend?
I'm a big fan of the Hankook RS4s. We race on them with our endurance cars, and we're not gentle at all on them. We would typically race 16 hours straight. Sorry, not straight, in 2 sessions, two 8s, or an 8 and a 7. And those tires will last that entire weekend, and then we'll cycle them as a testing tire afterwards. Usually at Mosport, the front driver's side is got a lot of wear, especially Calabogie too, if we're really pushing the car. So, but it's a phenomenal tire, like really good wear. And 15-inch for 944s, I recommend. Because of the gearing and that, race car, street car, stick to 15-inch rims. I know they don't look cool, and actually my street car has 18s on them, so I don't practice what I preach. But from a gearing standpoint, 15s are good, and so Hankook has 225s, 245s, so depending on your rim. And then rim-wise, there's we use Youngbloods, which is a great race rim, cost-effective, and there's still a good supply of foam dials and other variants, D90s for the 944 that work really well. So other than that, from a racing standpoint, for an extreme summer tire, we've tried Xenias, I'm trying to remember, Falcons basically, and just keep going back to the Hancooks for ability to wear. They're finicky on temperatures, but once you figure out your temperature band, you can really push those, and it's a really fun tire. So I run them on my turbo, my street car, and all the race cars, like except the Hoosier R7 cars. So
Right. What's a good preventative measure, like maintenance measure for a 944 turbo?
Don't turn the boost knob up. Just routine inspections and timing belt, routine inspections, and then again, making sure that the fuel is really good. Like for track purposes, it gets expensive, but using a race gas will certainly help. They have a NOx system in them, but it's not as advanced as current NOx systems. So just fuel, timing belt maintenance, general maintenance, and again, there's a lot of kits out there to increase boost. Use well-known systems and make sure that the mapping in the DME is set to that, because that's, as someone, I blew up I was going really fast at Mosport up the back straight. I leaned out for a split second and just ate every piston. And it wasn't anything other than fuel supply and just pump gas, so now I was pushing 20 PSI of boost, which isn't good for them. So again, learn from my mistakes. So
are you going to still build and sell the 944 roll bar?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have a few of them in stock, and we have a number of solutions. 944, to answer the question, yes, we have it for cabs as well, for those inclined to track their cab, and we have a number of plug and play systems for Cayman, GT4, all variants of Cayman, GT4, and 911 through all the variants as well in years. So we have solutions for everything pretty much.
If somebody were trying to put together a race car platform, should they start with a 944 or a Cayman, early Cayman?
I think it depends on budget. Everything's going to come down to budget. 944, you could end up very similar costs if what you're starting with is not a good platform. So if it's a 30-year-old barn find, you're going to end up in the $60K range to build that car. And again, also progression and where you want to go. The Caymans, for obvious reasons that we've been talking about with IMS bearings, you kind of should plan on pulling the engine and doing some IMS solution, boroscope it, check it out. Just so again, I think the 944 will be a more cost-effective platform. We've solved a lot of problems with finding parts, but there's still going to be, I think, as time goes on, there will be issues with parts. But I don't know. I'm curious to hear Dirk's opinion on that. So,
well, I think from an ease standpoint, I think the Cayman actually might make a better one, just because it's a little bit more out of the box ready. You know what I mean? A little more not competitive out of the box, but it's definitely made some strides over the 944 chassis. So I think you have to do fewer things just to get the car to be, competitive. Having said that, though, I don't think there's much that's more fun than tossing a 944 around the track. So, I think it might even come down to taste, because I think like John said, once you're into it, and depending on how competitive you want to be, I think the final budget build would almost be the same.
Yeah. Engine being the exception. That if you need to do a full engine rebuild, you'll be much more cost effective in a 944, even with a full built balanced engine versus a Cayman. But other than that, I mean, the platform is further advanced. There's no question. So,
all right. Does putting an LS in a 944 affect the handling?
So it'll be sideways a lot. But interestingly enough, is that the LS3 LS swap engines are not that much heavier than a factory engine. So from a balance standpoint, there's slight compensation in the suspension setup, and then it's down to having the factory transaxle can take, really seriously can take 500 horsepower. The torque tube is another thing, 30-year-old torque tube. Again, we can rebuild those. So that's where you can get into twisting and problems. But they're pretty fun. It's a lot of power though, 480 at the wheels with a hot cam. So you certainly have to learn pedal sensitivity. Otherwise it'll be a wall-seeking missile. So.
How many years is it safe to keep using a 944 timing belt if it's not getting much mileage?
That's tough. I mean, depends if it's stored inside, outside, right? Like, the problem is with the rubber getting old and cracking, right?
Yeah, I mean, anything after 5 years, you're pretty much on borrowed time, to be very honest. If you can't remember when it was done, then do it. Porsche's, it's interesting because Porsche, the timing belt was one of those items that they actually recommended the interval based on time or mileage. It's not just mileage. And I've seen cars that sat for 8 years that got fired up and drove around for several years. I've seen cars that had a timing belt done 5 years prior with very minimal mileage and the belt let go. So I definitely would stick to the recommended interval. And if the vehicle has been driven, especially seasonally or all year round or anything like that, definitely adhere to the time that's recommended on it. Because, depending on the model, when it goes, it can cost a lot of money.
Right. Will John slow down now that I can finally catch him in a race?
Sorry. I don't know. I mean, I'm excited. Like, I'm so passionate about club racing and PCA and these cars in general. I actually would anyone who's interested, I'd love to help them with getting faster or learning different things. That's how I learned. That's how I landed up in a 944. I was at Porsche Platz and talking to different people, and they're like, no, stay out of the high performance cars. Try something, try a 944, get really good at it, and I'm happy to share that knowledge. So the answer is no, I'm not slowing down, but I will help you catch up. So
you're only winning if they're beating you.
Indeed.
Somebody wants to know when the grand opening party is going to be.
Ask COVID.
I was going to say that's a COVID question.
Yeah, I mean, we've been really fortunate that we're allowed to stay open and we're practicing. So Sean, who's holding the boom behind us, he's wearing a mask. Dirk and I are kind of in a bubble together, but we still, everywhere in the building, we're wearing masks and one client at a time, 2 max if they're a couple and stuff. So we really wanted to come out with a splash and be with everyone and show them, what we're up to, because there's so much more. We have a whole other unit with different projects. So hopefully by next summer, we can do some abridged version of it, and possibly if we're allowed to have 15 or whatever the number is, we can do a number of consecutive nights to accomplish the goal and give people a safe, comfortable, distanced environment. So,
are you placing any John Blode wheel orders for 924s?
Yeah, absolutely. The next week, I'm going to definitely be putting some in for my car, and happy to tag on a bunch more. So the more on a pallet, the better. So,
does an aftermarket plenum actually make a difference on a naturally aspirated engine, say a 3.8 M97, absent any other upgrades?
IPD.
Yeah, the IPD. So it does and it doesn't. It really depends on what you're using it for. I think, one of those things, the best way to find out if it actually does anything is to talk to people who've had it before and after again. I don't think you would see the results of an IPD on a dyno, to be honest, but I think you'll see it. Actually, I know you'll see it on the back straight at Autosport. So most of the 997, 996, 997 clients that I've installed them on, or even newer platforms, Caymans, 981s, will tell me that they usually get about 5K more on the back straight. So it's definitely a velocity thing. The way that it's designed, again, Porsche is very good at designing their systems to work really, really well. The whole idea behind the plenum was splitting the air to specific banks. There's a little bit of an issue there simply because the Porsche engines do work on three-phase harmonics in the intake when it's running. So if you actually have a wedge that is complicating matters with the flow, that's why the newer IPD plenums actually have the butterfly inside with the control. I think on an older NA, you'll see a gain in strictly in the top end velocity. On the 981 or 991 platforms with the one-piece plenum, I think you'll see a bigger gain actually. So especially on a GT3 even. So if you do the one-piece larger plenum with the larger throttle body, that's the other thing too is Porsche generally over throttle bodies their cars already. So a stock throttle body can handle a lot more volume than it needs. So you don't always need to go to a larger throttle body. But if you are going to spend time at the track and it's all high-end, top-end RPM velocity, then yes, it'll make a difference. So I guess short answer is yes, it makes a difference.
So to add to that is Sharkworks has a really good write-up about performance improvements on 997.2 DFI variants. So 997.2S and regular. And so we had a 997.2 base model for many years, cab, and I did IPD plenum, combined it with a Softronic tune and exhaust, so pulling the center pipe out. And I mean, I never dynoed it, but dyno wise, the RPM range was much more flexible. It felt better, and the combination of all of that with breaking out the air inlets on the airbox and stuff. The airbox is fine. You don't need an aftermarket airbox, but just getting it more air in it. So again, Sharkworks has a really great write-up. It's exactly what I did to our car, and I felt I wouldn't say it like it didn't boost at 50 or 60 horsepower, but it gave enough to make it a little bit more fun at the track and a more flexible and fluffy RPM range. Sounds weird to say it that way, but it just felt better. So
we have a question that do you guys only do work on Porsche, or do you do other cars?
We deal with all brands and European brands. I mean, we trying to think of what we've had through. We had a TR4 we did a full engine rebuild on. There's an Audi on the lift that we purposely kept away from. So
Defender, Arconic.
Yeah, Arconic Defender. So really, yeah, no, we're very flexible. We have the tooling and the diagnostics for most brands. We're doing a Denon BMW M3, and doing a pretty cool kit on it. So no, the answer is yes, we can work on anything. So
great. I think that might be all the questions. Have you?
Yeah,
can you do a 7.2 GT3 4.1?
What's that?
Can you do a 997.2 GT3 4.1?
Yes, yeah, we certainly can do one. there may or may not be something happening there, but yes, we wanted to. Part of the original goal was to have a bit of a launch or release party or something like that, and we do have a couple of pretty exceptional projects that we're working on for some really good clients, and there may be a significant displacement upgrade to a GT3. But we've got some really cool builds coming. 997 4-liter that's going to be track specific, which is going to be an absolute monster. And then a 4.1-liter GT3, and then actually a 3.8-liter rough Boxster as well. So
cool.
And 4.2 maybe even be possible.
So we're working on something right now to possibly push the limits to a 4.2. We may have to do some internal research there first, but yes.
Great. I think that's it for the text questions. Roger, do you want to jump into the giveaways?
Yeah, sure. So, but first of all, thank you to John and Dirk. That was great. And we are hopeful that maybe do one or two more of these with Mantis in the coming months, and maybe a little deep dive on specific projects. So let's see what people's interest is on specific topics and see what we can do with Mantis in terms of, as I say, like deep dive on one or two of the things that have been touched on tonight.